Production by
Michael Lofton.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussion, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. The show concentrates on theological topics, historical matters, and philosophical problems with content ranging from introductory material to in-depth examinations. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Welcome to Reason and Theology. Your host, Michael, on a Tuesday. So y'all liked that song during the countdown. Thank you. Made that about 6-7 days ago, somewhere around there. Yeah. I think it was on Saturday. So maybe not 6 days. My perception of time is very skewed since I'd got a lot on my plate. Wanted to sneak this one in before we have a show later on at 6 p.m. So that's going to be in 50 minutes. But I had to do this one. By the way, y'all are probably wondering what's the show at 6 p.m. Central. We're going to have River Run back by popular demand. He's going to be talking about Skillovics and accusations of weaponized ambiguity at Vatican II. So that's going to be really fun. Now, what I wanted to do is just briefly talk about something that I just saw from Dr. Taylor Marshall, released maybe 2 hours ago. I mean, it was extremely recent. And the video is entitled Padre Pio and the Third Secret of Fatima, False Church and Great Apostasy. Caught my attention because I've done a lot of study when it comes to the area of the Third Secret of Fatima. And it also caught my eye because Padre Pio's in it, which I've read a lot of his work because he's my patron saint. So love Padre Pio. Absolutely love him. So when I saw that, I said, okay, got to check it out. And what I heard was Dr. Marshall is effectively talking about a false church within the true church. And this is not anything new, right? I mean, we've always had unbelievers in our midst, the wheat and the tare. We've even had figures like Anne Catherine Emmerich who have talked about, two churches, a false one and a true one. But so that in and of itself is nothing new. But I'm getting the impression as I listen to this, he doesn't say it, and that's why I'm going to ask it here, but I'm getting the impression that he thinks that this false church is led by the Pope. Now, I don't know that for sure. I haven't heard him say that explicitly. I'm just getting that impression. So my question to Dr. Marshall is, if he can clarify it for myself and many others who are wondering the same right now, does he believe that this false church within the true church is headed by the current Roman pontiff, Pope Francis? I think we deserve to know the answer to that. If the answer is no, then how is this news? We've known about that from day one. We've always had Judases in the church from day one. Nothing new here. But he uses Padre Pio in a way that suggests this is something new. And we could talk about what exactly is Padre Pio getting at. How does this relate to the Great Apostasy? But I don't think that discussions concerning the great apostasy lend itself to the view that the Roman pontiff will be the head of the apostate church, so that he would be head of the true church and the apostate church. I don't think Padre Pio can be used to support that thesis. Again, I'm not saying that Dr. Marshall is saying that, because I don't know that. This is why I'm asking. Could you answer that for us? Are you saying that? Because if the answer then is yes, well, first of all, I'm offended you used my patron saint to promote that view. And then second of all, that's really going to create some major ecclesiological problems. And at that point, you're just centimeters away from leaving the church, because it won't take you long to figure out, well, this is a pretty novel view. At this point, it's easier to just say Pope Francis is just a false pope, and there you go. You end up going Sedevacantists or going Eastern Orthodox or something like that. I mean, you just find your way outside of the church at that point. So that's why I think that we deserve to know, because I'm getting the impression that's where he's coming from. So I think that it would be helpful if we could get some clarification there. Until then, I want to read something from Padre Pio to Paul VI, because he's using Padre Pio to indicate that this began in the 60s. And of course, Paul VI is right there in the 60s, right? Not that I wouldn't affirm in a qualified sense that the smoke of Satan has entered the church, and not that I wouldn't accept what Padre Pio was saying in a qualified sense. Of course I would. But I wouldn't accept the idea that Padre Pio was effectively saying this false church is going to be headed by the real Pope. And you can definitely see that wasn't the intention of Padre Pio, because here's what he says to Paul VI. So you can know that he's not saying, okay, the true Pope is also going to be the head of a false church, because here is what we're going to read. Here's something that he says to Paul VI, which would clearly exclude that view. And if you're going to say, well, no, the Pope was going to lead this false church way after Paul VI, you've got to be kidding me. We've had some serious problems from that era unto the present. So I mean, the stuff that's going on right now with Pope Francis, we can point to some things with Paul VI, kind of, it's pretty similar. So if we're going to say Pope Francis is the head of this false church, I think we have to apply it by extension to Paul VI. But Padre Pio himself doesn't seem to hold that view, which is, again, just what I'm saying. It's implied that Padre Pio did not believe that it would be this false church would be headed by the true Pope, who's also head of the true church. He says this, and maybe let me share it on my screen. That might be helpful so y'all can follow along. Okay, let's see. It's a pretty short letter. Your Holiness, availing myself of your Holiness's meeting with a capitular fathers, I unite myself in spirit with my brothers, and in a spirit of faith, love, and obedience to greatness of him whom you represent on earth, offer my respectful homage to your august person, humbly kneeling at your feet. Is this something that you would say to somebody who's head of a false church and a true church, who's head of the church of the Antichrist and the church of Christ? No. The Capuchin order has always been among the first in their love, fidelity, and reverence for the Holy See. I pray the Lord that its members remain ever thus. Again, this is Paul VI, right, that he's speaking to. Continuing their tradition of seriousness and religious asceticism, evangelical poverty, faithful observance, and of the rule of constitutions, renewing themselves in vigorous living and deep interior spirit, always ready at the least gesture from your Holiness to go forward at once to assist the church in her needs. I know that your heart suffers much these days on account of the happenings in the church. Hardly something that you could say about somebody who's head of a false church, right? And it would, again, be absurd to say that, well, Paul VI wasn't head of this false church, but Pope Francis is, when pretty much the same criticisms can be leveled against both of them, at least substantially. For peace in the world, for the great needs of its people, but above all for the lack of obedience of some, even Catholics, to the lofty teachings which you, assisted by the Holy Spirit and in the name of God, have given us. He's talking about Humanae Vitae, right? I offer your holiness my daily prayers and sufferings, the insignificant but sincere offering of the least of your sons, asking the Lord to comfort you with his grace to continue along the direct yet often burdensome way, in defense of those eternal truths which can never change with the times. In the name of my spiritual sons and of the praying groups, I thank your holiness for the clear and decisive words you have spoken in the recent encyclical Humanae Vitae, and I reaffirm my own faith and my unconditional obedience to your inspired directives. Again, you couldn't say that to somebody who's head of a true church and a false church, as novel as the claim might be. May God grant truth to triumph, and may peace be given to his church, tranquility to the people of earth, and health and prosperity to your holiness, so that when these disturbing clouds pass over, the reign of God may triumph in all our hearts through the apostolic work of the Supreme Shepherd of all Christians. Prostrate at your feet, I beg you to bless me, my brothers in religion, my spiritual sons, the praying groups, all the sick, that we may faithfully fulfill the good works done in the name of Jesus, and under your protection, your holiness's most humble servant. From San Giovanni Rotondo, the 12th of September, 1968. So, hardly again something that you could say to a pope that would be head of a false church and a true church. And this isn't secondhand information. I mean, this is a letter from Padre Pio to Paul VI. We're not having to go, well, Father Amorth said that Padre Pio said. We're not having to go that direction. And even then, what was being said doesn't lend itself to the position that the current pontiff is head of a true church and a false church. But again, I don't know for sure that if that's actually what's being said. The problem is ambiguity in Dr. Marshall's position. I mean, ironically, he faults Vatican II for ambiguity, but here's some ambiguity if you've ever seen it. I mean, where exactly are you going with this, Dr. Marshall? I mean, can you please clarify the ambiguity? Because some of us are really getting the impression that you're saying that the current pontiff is head of the true church and false church. You might not be saying that. I want to give you the judgment of charity, which is why I'm just asking, because a lot of us are getting that impression. Looking through the chat to see if I see some questions. Y'all can send some if you have any. Go ahead and do so. Make sure to send it to @ReasonAndTheology. We have a few moments here, and then I need to do the best that I can to take a few moments to prep before the show with River Run. I'm looking here. Let's see. Hugh says, I wish the same theologians that our so-called traditionalists cite, I wish that the same theologians that so-called traditionalists cite read what they have to say about the indefectibility of the church. Right. Linda says, when does the hip-hop album drop? Never. What else do we have? I'm looking, y'all. I apologize if I'm overlooking. I'm trying to find. Preddy did a review of the review of their. No way, did he really? Well, I can't just continue it myself, right? It has to be somebody else. I can't just, keep it going myself. So maybe y'all R&T fans, if y'all want to review that one, y'all can keep the chain going. What's the best book proving papacy in the first millennium? Yeah, it's really hard to give you just one single book. Although I'm very hopeful that Eric's book is going to be that one volume book. Yeah, very, very hard to say. Start with this. Dom John Chapman wrote a book, The Infallibility of the First 8 Ecumenical Councils. Start there. I'm not saying it's the best necessarily. I'm just saying start there. Or maybe start with Giles' book, but I would do John Chapman. River said, and thank you for the super chat. Take your time. I still need to sit down. This is good content. Yeah. So, I mean, if y'all have, questions, go ahead and put them in. We got a little bit of time. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, Father Weinity. What the church will end up, this is Father Thomas Weinity, really, really well-respected Catholic theologian and scholar. Recently, I say recently, just a few years back, right, says this: what the church will end up with then is a pope who is the pope of the Catholic Church and simultaneously the de facto leader for all practical purposes of a schismatic church. Yeah, I have to just strongly disagree with Father Juan Indy here. And I would need to go back and read the context to get exactly what does he mean here for practical purposes, right? I mean, that's a very qualified sense, so I'd need to go and read what he's saying. But I could see somebody nuancing it, even though I don't agree with that. I could see somebody nuancing it based upon what he's saying, their practical purposes, that wouldn't lead to the conclusion that he actually is the head of a true church and a false church. Practical purposes is something a little different, although it's too close for me. I would not adopt that view. So either way that he lands on it, I would say he's wrong, but I would think that qualification there, he could be referring to a very nuanced position. I'd have to go back and look at it. But I appreciate you bringing it up because I actually meant to bring that quote up during the show, but I forgot. Somebody said no, it wasn't so Lyndon didn't do another video, it was just a playlist. Right. I saw the playlist. That was pretty funny. You gotta laugh out loud from me. Which is extremely rare if I'm ever not, if I'm in private, there's nobody around me, I don't laugh out loud. I don't care how funny it is. Unless it's The Office. Then I will laugh out loud. But you did get a laugh out loud from me whenever I read that and nobody was around. I actually did. LOL. Who will run the false church? The Antichrist? What will happen to the Vatican at this time? Yeah. Whole lot that could be said here. But my concern right now is the idea that the true pope would be running the false church. Or worse, that the pope could be the Antichrist. Again, I don't know where Dr. Marshall lands on this. I don't know. So please don't misunderstand and think that I am accusing him of maintaining that position. I don't know. I'm just saying it really seems like it. So can you clarify? Because this is the question we're all asking at this point. One of them at least. The other question I'm asking is, do you still believe that Nostra Aetate taught the heresy of Pelagianism? That's one question that I still would really like answered. Do you still believe that, or are you walking that one back? Which is fine if you walk it back. I mean, I've walked a lot of things back. There was one point in time where I would have, if you had asked me, I probably would have said, yeah, the true pope, I believe, is also the head of a false church. I mean, I would have said some stuff like that at one point. There were points in time where I would have accused Vatican II of heresy. Dr. Marshall reminds me of myself, about 2015-ish or so, right around there. 2015, 2016. There was a point in time where I would have maintained those positions, and I say that was wrong. I've definitely walked that back because I've seen here's where those positions lead. So I've had to dial it back a little bit. We're all frustrated with the crisis in the church right now. We're all frustrated. Anybody who has a love for the church is frustrated right now, and rightly so. We should be frustrated. But sometimes we got to walk it back because we react a little bit too much. And I know I did, and hopefully I still don't. But if I do, I'm happy to walk it back when I do. So if he does walk it back, as far as what he said about Vatican II, great. Join the club. You're now like me. I've walked that one back. But I don't know if he would. I haven't heard anything. All I know is what's out there in public. So be helpful if we could get some clarification there. Should Dr. Marshall be excommunicated for his claims in Vatican II? I don't think he should be excommunicated. I mean, look, to be excommunicated for something like, you would have to be obstinately maintaining that, having been rebuked by the proper authorities, like your bishop or somebody like that rebukes you and corrects you, and then you just continue to maintain that position. At that point, sure, but that's never happened. I mean, I do know who Dr. Marshall's bishop is, but no, I mean, they're generally dealing with weightier issues, some of them at least, and then some of them are dealing with issues at all, and that's part of the problem. So, no, nobody should just be excommunicated just because they've said something wrong or that it is even something that leads to heresy. All right, everybody should have an opportunity to be approached and corrected, even if it's not by the proper authorities, like, a superior, even if it's just done charitably by another brother in the faith. They should have that opportunity to be corrected, but it would require, let me make a qualification here. If you are maintaining a heresy, obstinately doubting or maintaining something in and of itself that's heretical, there is a penalty of automatic excommunication there. The problem is the thesis an ecumenical council taught heresy is not in and of itself heretical, but it does necessarily leads to heresy. And it might be wrong. What we're talking about when we talk about heresy, heretical, we're talking about something extremely specific, and that is a denial of dogma. And there's been no dogmatic proposition saying that a heretical, an ecumenical council cannot teach heresy. There's never been any dogmatic definitions there. Now, it is definitely going to lead to that if you carry it out consistently. It is going to then lead to denying a dogma, namely the indefectibility of the church. But in and of itself, it's not heresy, so there wouldn't be an automatic excommunication there. But again, you carry it out to its logical conclusion, that could then lead to an automatic excommunication. Again, obstinate doubt or a denial of something that is dogmatic, right? Now, just because you're technically not a heretic doesn't mean you might not be in mortal sin for what you're doing. You could obstinately deny something that's authoritatively taught yet non-definitively taught just by the ordinary, maybe papal magisterium. That could potentially be a mortal sin. There's very rare cases where you could withhold assent from those teachings, but we've noted many times those are pretty rare and qualified. So generally speaking, it's a grave sin, and done with full knowledge and full consent, it would be a mortal sin. How much more a little bit more authoritative teachings? So, and again, in answer to your question, no, not necessarily. I don't think that one should be for that, but I do think they should be corrected, which is why I did that, right? And if maybe an authority in the church decides to correct, all the better. But right now, fraternally, any Christian can correct another Christian. And since that was said publicly, I did so publicly, right? If somebody says something privately, I'll correct them privately. But if somebody says something publicly that needs to be corrected, I'll correct it publicly. All right. Should we try to convert Jews? Absolutely. We should most certainly try to. To them belong the promises, to the Jew first and then to the Greek. We should be focusing our evangelization is first on them and then to others. They're the ones who deserve the gospel the most, because they were over there worshiping the one God while we were over there making sacrifices to pagan gods. They had the old covenant while we were just pagans. So the gospel goes to them first, then to the Greeks. Absolutely, we should be evangelizing them. If we care about their souls, we should. Which is one of the reasons why I want to have some more on the show. It's just hard to get them to dialogue and come on the show and do that. Yeah, Fortescue's book in the first millennium, it's okay. I mean, it's not bad. It's just, yeah, that might be a good intro. Okay. I'm looking. Ask Gregory to come on and discuss Cayetan. I think we should do a show on Cayetan for sure. And then we need to settle, is it Cayetan or Cajetan? Dr. Minder says Cajetan. And so I'm inclined to say he's right, but I'm not letting go of the fact that I'm always going to say Cayetan because of the Martin Luther movie. Even if it's the wrong way to say it, I'm going to insist on saying it in the wrong way from now on. I saw somebody's talking about Jaroslav Pelikan. That caught my eye. What Marshall quoted today shouldn't rise to the necessary level of evidence of something Padre Pio presumably said. Yeah, all this talk of so-and-so said that so-and-so. Stop. Just stop. I can give you direct quotes from saints. Let's go to the church fathers. Let's actually read the primary sources in the fathers themselves, instead of so-and-so said that maybe that so-and-so, and then they may have said that this and that. It reminds me of Ancient Aliens, the Ancient Alien show. I mean, well, perhaps this happened, and if this happened, then that happened, and if this happened, then maybe this is the case. Ancient alien theorists say yes. It's always speculation built on speculation, built on speculation, built on speculation, and give me something a little bit more tangible than so-and-so said that so-and-so said that so-and-so said about the third secret of Fatima, which may have a missing interpretation by the Virgin. But let's go to what we do know, okay? Let's go to what we do know. Let's go to what is clear and is solid and is objective evidence. Let's start there first. Then we can talk about this other stuff. Then we can talk about the qualifications of, this is why when people try to message me about the third secret of Fatima and stuff like that, and I know that there's somebody who doesn't even know the basics of the faith, I refuse to talk to them about it. I'm not going to talk to you about this. Why are you asking me about nuances on these matters that when you haven't even read the Bible yet? You haven't read the basics of the faith yet. You don't even have a basic foundation. And you want to talk to me about the third secret of Fatima and some of the nuances involved there? No, your priorities are off here. When we get the basics down and we've discussed what we do objectively know, now we're prepared to have these other discussions. Frankly, though, most people who are hearing these discussions about the third secret of Fatima have no business hearing them. They're not prepared for them. They haven't been introduced to the basics of the faith yet. They're not prepared for these discussions. They're going to make too many mistakes when they do so. Okay. Well, somebody says Taylor Marshall has a large following. He should be careful how he words things. Well, my thing is right now is just the ambiguity in the position. Can you just come out and say who's the head of this false church? Do you believe it's Pope Francis? I think we deserve to know that at this point. Do you think he's causing more good or harm to the Catholic Church at the present? It's hard to say. I don't watch a lot of his stuff, but I'm very concerned about some of these things that I'm saying. So it's hard to say. because again, I would have to sit there and go through his material, and I really haven't done it. So what I do know is that a little bit of dangerous air mixed with a whole lot of good is still poisonous, right? Even if you don't intend it, right? I mean, a glass of water with a little bit of a drop of poison in it is still poisonous. So he can do a whole lot of great and then come out with something like he did the other day, claiming that Nostra Aetate teaches heresy. And that ruined it right there. That was the drop of poison. And if he has that in his videos, what else does he have in his videos is my question. I don't know, because I don't really watch them. Most people just kind of will send me something and ask me to comment on it, and I might comment here and there, but I don't really watch his material. But again, if I just stumbled across that, I can only imagine what I would find if I sat there and really consistently listened to what he was saying. What's Pope Michael up to these days? I don't know. I haven't checked on him. Y'all tell me. St. Bellarmine is pretty clear the Pope couldn't be both, as Taylor Marshall implied, unless I'm completely misunderstanding him. I agree with you. Yeah, that wasn't Bellarmine's position. So what should we do, and how can we fix modernism? Oh goodness. I mean, how long do we have? Gosh, 20 minutes before the next show. Where do we even begin? Look, some of this is outside of our immediate control, right? I mean, ultimately, this is going to boil down to the bishops. And I'm not talking about, minus some kind of miracle on God's part. I'm just talking about, generally speaking. A lot of this is at the feet of the bishops. It's going to be up to them to fix this, right? And it's on them. The fact that it hasn't been fixed is on them. There are some things we can do, right? Pray, do penance, sure, fast, become more familiar with our faith, correct error whenever we see it. There's things that we could do, but ultimately speaking, this is going to be fixed by the bishops. They're ultimately the ones in charge of fixing this issue, capable and have the authority to fix this issue, and might I add, ultimately responsible for this issue. Okay, they're ultimately responsible for the problems in the church, and they're the very ones who have the authority to fix it, the objective ability to fix it, and the authority to fix it. It is frustrating being a layman, not a whole lot we can do. What else do we have in the chat? Sad to see this Protestant Catholic sedevacantist pipeline, right? I've experienced it before, and so I've seen where this is leading. That's why I'm concerned. That's why I'm asking this question in the video. Would you do a video on the Book of Revelation? Yes, I would love to do that. That would be very fun. Good question. Too long for the chat, though. What are some of RT's videos on the papacy to start? First of all, go to our most recent one, which was the review that Father Patrick and Eric did with on their debate that they had on Pints with Aquinas. It's on this channel. It was a few weeks ago. You can't miss it. Start there. Yeah, I mean the rhetorical question: Would you trust Francis to even teach your kid about basic Catholic dogmas? If you wouldn't trust him, why would you trust him to lead the church? Well, let's put it this way: I don't think that Pope Francis should have even been made a deacon, let alone a priest or a bishop or a cardinal or a pope. If we're just talking about, whether or not he should be in ministry, no, I don't think he should. So in that level, no, I wouldn't. But the fact of the matter, he is, right? He is the head of the church. So we have to now deal with it. But if you were asking me, like, maybe I'm a bishop or something, would you ordain Pope Francis? No. And I would have concerns about them as a layman. I would definitely not admit them to holy orders. But it's not up to me, right? It's up to our bishops, and this is one of the reasons why I say they're partly responsible, because of the men that they have ordained, the people that they have chosen as our leaders. It's problematic. Fact of the matter, though, is he is our Pope. There's definitely respect that is owed to the office, even if it's not personally deserved. The office demands it, right? So we still have to give some respect there, but that's a little, and recognizing that he's the Pope and recognizing the respect that's given there and recognizing the promises that are also made for anybody who holds that office is one thing. Would I personally have them teach? No, I wouldn't have them in ministry to begin with, but it's not up to me. So, people say, well, there's a shortage of priests. Well, then let there be a shortage of priests. It would be better to have that than have bishops and shepherds who don't belong there to begin with, right? I mean, God can take care of his church. So just because we have a shortage in vocations doesn't mean, okay, we need to now go and ordain people who don't need to be ordained. That's just going to make it worse. Okay. Let's see. I always get this one. Why don't you call him as a brother and tell him, Michael? Well, number one, it was done publicly. His video is public, so why can't mine be public? But more importantly, as I've said a million times now, I didn't get a response to my last email, so I'm not going to go chasing him around. I want an answer publicly, though. I mean, I don't care what he says to me privately anyway. I mean, he could answer my question privately. That's not going to matter because other people are asking this question, not just me. So this isn't just for my personal curiosity that I'm asking the question. I'm asking a question for everybody else who is watching this video. They're going to want to know as well. So if he told me something private, would it be good for me to now just go and disclose that publicly to everyone? No, it wouldn't. So he needs to answer publicly. Therefore, I'm asking him publicly. What else do we have? And I got to go here in just a little bit. I have not read his book, Infiltration. I read through the very end of it, and there was no conclusion, which in and of itself right there. I have some questions, right? Any book, at least in the last few hundred years, is generally going to have a conclusion at the end, just kind of summarizing what all has been discussed. I didn't see it. I mean, if it's there, my electronic copy didn't have it. We'll put it that way. So correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I just have a bad copy or something. But I have the ebook, and it doesn't have it at the end. So that was a, but that doesn't mean that everything discussed in there is unreliable. No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying as far as how it's written. But is some of the things that I've heard him say in some of his videos that weren't very helpful. He said, and I discussed this in my book, and I'm just thinking, well, that raises now concerns about the book, Well, but y'all let me know how it is. Unless I have a need to really read it, I'm not going to. And from everything I hear in the videos, he's not giving anything new that I haven't already come across myself. Like I say, he reminds me of myself back in 2015. I'm not hearing anything new. I'm hearing the same exact stuff that I used to say. So I'm sure he's uncovered a few things in there in the book or something that I haven't encountered before. But the vast majority of it I probably have already read or am familiar with. Okay. I'm looking. I see y'all talking about Brian Denlinger in the chat. We need to do another. Oh, And I have the best video ever to review for y'all next comedy hour. Maybe later tonight, maybe tomorrow. But I got to do a quick comedy hour. Best video ever. Not even going to tell you what it is. Well, all right, I'll give you a tease. It's like a 4-year-old charismatic kid preaching. And yeah. We're going to go over that one. Give you a couple comments on it. Would I say that he's an occult schismatic, Dr. Taylor Marshall? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speculate about the guy's, internal. I don't want to speculate on that kind of stuff. It's hard enough reading one's own personal intentions and motives. I mean, judging another man's intentions and motives, that's very hard to do, right? I mean, you'd have to have some really objective stuff to go by to discern intentions and the internal forum and things. I'd rather not speculate about his internal. I'd rather just ask, hey, can you clarify this for us? And I can go based on what is publicly said. See, there's a couple super chats. Let me do those real quick. Thank you for your nuance on these. It's very refreshing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Cosmic Catholic. And Sarmad, seen that name before. Do you think Pope Francis is a good pope? What do you think about those who justify everything he does and says? I mean, I humbly have to say, no, I don't think he's a good pope. Does that mean I'd make a better pope? That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just saying I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think he leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, Gregory the Great thought that he wasn't a good pope, right? The standard's pretty high, right? The standard's really high when it comes to the papacy. But as I already said just moments ago, if I were a bishop, I wouldn't even ordain him to diaconate. So that's what I think as far as fittingness for ministry. But it's not up to me. He's already, been ordained. He's the Pope. He's in authority over me. And the office he holds demands respect. So I give that to the office that he holds in the person of Pope Francis. I give it, for the sake of the office, I give him that respect. For the sake of the office. I do think there's sometimes some distortions about Pope Francis, what he actually believes and says, and miscommunication. I do think there's some of that, but obviously that's not always the case, right? That's definitely not always the case. But there is some confusion here and there. That being said, we still have to deal with the times where it's not misreports and confusion. This really is his position. What do we do now? That's still bad enough. Why has the liberal interpretation of the Spirit of Vatican II been so successfully promulgated throughout the church as opposed to the Orthodox interpretation? I do believe because of evil. I do believe because of Satan. I do believe that 100%. And it might be the worst after all councils, but after quite a few of the councils, there were a lot of issues. Right after Nicaea, it was really, really bad. Really bad. Extremely bad right after Nicaea. But I would say it's even worse in this era than it was in, right after Nicaea 1. Yeah. I do agree with Paul VI. The smoke of Satan has entered the church. I do believe this is Satan trying to confusing people. I do believe that. I do believe that many of the bishops have failed to properly implement the Second Vatican Council. I do believe that. If they were successfully implementing it, they wouldn't be going against the faith and timeless traditions. They wouldn't be doing that. They would be in continuity with them. Okay. Do you think Marshall's work is heading towards a set of conscious thoughts? Absolutely. That's why I'm concerned. I do think it logically follows. But a lot of people don't carry their views out to their logical conclusions. Either set of Contism or Eastern Orthodoxy. It does lead outside of formal communion with the papacy. That much for sure. Yeah, Whether he goes the Sedevacantist route or the Eastern Orthodox route or another route is something else. And I'm saying if he carries it to his logical conclusion. Fortunately, so far, to my knowledge, he hasn't done so. But some of that's also going to depend on how he answers the question. What does he think? Is Pope Francis the head also of a true church and a false church? Have I heard of Pastor Manning? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, I don't know Pastor Manning. I thought you were talking about Cardinal Manning, because we're here talking about the Antichrist, so I have Cardinal Manning on the mind. Sorry. No, I don't know who Pastor Manning is. I was thinking of Cardinal Manning, given the topic of what we're discussing. Never thought I'd hear a 4-year-old charismatic. Wait. Just wait. It's bad. It's bad. And that's all I'm going to say about it. You have to watch the video for the rest. How many distinctions and nuances do you make in a day? A lot. and I'm not trying to just nuance things away to the point of absurdity. No, I mean, but I've realized that if you're going to do theology well, you have to be nuanced. So, Dr. Marshall's just frustrated with the situation. Aren't we all? But he needs to be more careful on how he words things. I think it's more than just how he words things, right? I think some of the positions he objectively maintains are problematic. We're all frustrated. We're all fighting against liberalism. We're all fighting against abuse. We're all fighting against heresy. We're all fighting against the same stuff. But however much I appreciate somebody who has good intentions and loves Christ and wants to do well, sometimes we end up adopting positions that ends up undermining the faith. While trying to combat these problems, we end up adopting positions that are just as problematic as the thing we're fighting against. I mean, you can actually see this with some figures in the early church. They're trying to, I mean, Eutyches, right? I mean, he's trying to fight against Nestorianism, and then he adopts a heresy to do it. His intentions were well, but then he goes into his own error while doing it. All right, I got to go here in just a second, y'all. Sorry to keep you waiting there, River. There's Beyonce, then there's nuance. I don't get it. Is Beyonce known for her nuance or something? I totally don't get it. I'm out of the loop when it comes to a lot of this pop culture stuff. Was Pope Michael attempted to write in the encyclicals? I don't know if he has. Let me know. I told you about the time I tried to invite him on the show. I got blanked. He couldn't take me seriously, right? Couldn't take my show seriously. Okay. What do I think of life site news? I've been noticing some tendencies lately. How many nuances for a free indulgence? Well, I mean, they're handing them out like candy these days, so the indulgence system in and of itself would have been very, not that they aren't dogmatic and acceptable, but it would have been very confusing to the vast majority of Christians in, say, the 3rd century. They would have been really confused. Like, why are you this lax? You mean you can go to confession more than once in a lifetime? You mean you can have the temporal punishment? Not that they would have used those distinctions necessarily, but you mean you can have this remitted through reading so much of Scripture per day, and blah blah blah. I know there's a few more qualifications to the plenary indulgence, but our penitential system has become increasingly lax, really, since 4th century, right around there. Yeah. What else? Nuance? Is that a reference to Beyonce? Beyonce. I don't get it, y'all. I'm still not getting it. Y'all went right over my head. I totally don't get it. Y'all know Big Bang Theory, right? I'm like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. I don't get most of the just, really basic references. It just goes. I've been compared to Sheldon quite a few times. Okay, well, I think that's it because I got to get with River because we're doing our stream here in just a few minutes. So y'all stay tuned to that. We're going to meet on another stream here in just a few moments. It's the one titled Skillibex and Accusations of Weaponized Ambiguity at Vatican II with River Run. All right, see y'all here in just a few minutes. And, of course, like, subscribe, share this on your social media, and definitely check us out. Patreon.com/Reason and Theology if you want to support us. We'll see you in just a few minutes.